Kurt Cobain's death investigator breaks silence. It was not suicide. A case that seemed closed decades ago suddenly found itself back in the spotlight, not because of new DNA, a hidden confession, or a forgotten witness, but because someone who had spent years studying the evidence publicly declared that the official story didn't make sense. If the investigation was as straightforward as people believe, why do questions still refuse to disappear? Why are investigators, journalists, and millions of fans still arguing over the same evidence after all these years? To understand why this debate refuses to die, we have to go back to the final days of one of music's biggest icons and examine the claims that continue to divide opinion to this day. The early 1990 seconds belonged to Kurt Cobain. He wasn't just the face of Nirvana.
First of all, could you guys tell, I thought it was really cool that the story of why you chose your name, sort of the real meaning of Nirvana and how you tied it into punk.
He became the voice of an entire generation. His music defined an era. His lyrics felt painfully honest, and his fame exploded faster than almost anyone expected. But success came with a cost.
Constant pain. Finally, I haven't had a stomach problem for like over a year now. Yeah.
Behind sold-out concerts and chart-topping albums were struggles with addiction, overwhelming media attention, chronic health problems, and constant pressure. Friends later described someone who seemed exhausted by the weight of becoming a cultural symbol. Then everything suddenly stopped. Kurt Cobain was found dead inside his Seattle home. Authorities ruled the death a suicide. The case appeared to be over almost immediately. For many people, that was the end. For others, it became the beginning. Questions started appearing almost as fast as headlines. Some disappeared. Others refused to go away. Years later, those same questions would resurface in interviews, documentaries, books, and online investigation. And that's where another chapter of the story begins. Not with a new crime scene, not with newly discovered evidence, but with people who believed the evidence deserved another look. One of the most well-known voices is Tom Grant. Grant was a private investigator hired by Courtney Love shortly before Cobain's body was discovered. His original assignment was to help locate the missing musician. Instead, he found himself examining one of the most famous celebrity deaths in history. Over the years, Grant publicly argued that he believed the official conclusion was wrong. He claimed inconsistencies deserved far more scrutiny. His interviews attracted millions of viewers. His recordings became widely circulated. Supporters saw him as someone exposing unanswered questions. Critics argued he relied on speculation rather than proof. The debate only grew louder, but Tom Grant wasn't the only person whose comments reignited public interest. Years later, retired Seattle police Captain Greg Lowe also spoke publicly about the case after reviewing available evidence. He said he personally questioned whether the official conclusion fully explained everything he had seen. That statement immediately reignited decades of debate, not because it changed the official ruling. It didn't. Seattle police have continued to stand by their original conclusion that Kurt Cobain died by suicide, but hearing skepticism from someone with law enforcement experience caused many people to revisit the evidence all over again. And that's where things become far more complicated, because the biggest mystery isn't simply what happened. It's why people continue interpreting the same evidence in completely different ways. One of the most discussed points involves the handwritten note found at the scene. Authorities considered it part of the evidence supporting suicide. Others argued parts of the writing appeared more like a farewell to the music industry than to life itself. Some even questioned whether the ending matched the earlier sections. Handwriting experts have offered differing opinions over the years. No universally accepted finding has overturned the official conclusion, yet the debate continues. Then there was the shotgun. Investigators concluded Cobain used it to end his life. Supporters of alternative theories questioned whether the physical circumstances made that conclusion less certain than originally presented. Those claims have circulated widely online for years. However, forensic experts who support the official investigation argue the available evidence remains consistent with suicide. The disagreement isn't about whether questions exist. It's about how those questions should be interpreted. Another point that continues attracting attention is toxicology. Reports showed Cobain had heroin in his system. Supporters of homicide theories argue the reported level would have made it extremely difficult for him to carry out the actions described in the official account. Others, including forensic specialists who accept the official findings, have argued that drug tolerance varies significantly and that toxicology numbers alone cannot determine what someone was physically capable of doing. Again, the same evidence, different interpretation. The conversation never ends. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the entire story isn't the forensic evidence. It's what happened after. As the internet grew, so did the number of people investigating the case from their own homes. Books appeared. Podcasts followed. Documentaries examined old photographs frame by frame. Former detectives offered opinions. Crime analysts disagreed with one another. Every few years, the debate returned with renewed intensity, sometimes triggered by an anniversary, sometimes by a newly released interview, sometimes by comments from people connected to the original investigation. Each time, millions of people asked the same question. Was something overlooked, or were people simply refusing to accept an incredibly painful reality? Meanwhile, Seattle police periodically reviewed public interest surrounding the case. In 2014, previously undeveloped photographs from the original investigations were released publicly. The department explained that the images did not represent new evidence and reaffirmed its conclusion that Cobain died by suicide. Instead of ending speculation, those photographs fueled another wave of analysis. Online communities zoomed into every detail. Every object became a discussion. Every angle became a theory. It demonstrated something remarkable about high-profile investigations. Once public doubt takes hold, it becomes incredibly difficult to eliminate, especially when the person involved becomes larger than life. Kurt Cobain wasn't just another celebrity. He became a symbol. For millions, accepting his death meant confronting everything his music represented: pain, isolation, fame, addiction, mental health, hope, loss. Perhaps that's why every unanswered question feels so emotionally significant. People aren't simply examining evidence, they're searching for certainty, and certainty is incredibly difficult to achieve decades after an event. Even experienced investigators often acknowledge that older cases become harder, not easier, to evaluate. Witness memories fade, constant disappear. Physical evidence remains fixed, while interpretations evolve. That's exactly why opinions surrounding Cobain's death continue to shift, depending on who is examining the material. Some investigators remain convinced the official conclusion is correct. Others believe additional questions deserve deeper examination. Both perspectives continue existing side by side, yet one fact has never changed. No official investigation has overturned the original ruling. That reality is just as important as the ongoing debate itself, because separating verified facts from personal interpretations is essential whenever examining controversial cases. The discussions surrounding Kurt Cobain's death have become part of popular culture. They've inspired documentaries, books, television specials, countless interviews, and endless online discussions. But beneath every theory lies something much more human: a family that experienced unimaginable loss, friends who still remember him, fans who continue finding comfort in his music, and a legacy that refuses to disappear. More than 3 decades later, Kurt Cobain's death remains one of modern music's most discussed mysteries. Not because the official investigation keeps changing, but because public fascination never truly faded. Every new interview, every renewed claim, and every fresh analysis reminds us how difficult it can be for society to separate evidence from belief when the person at the center of the story becomes a cultural icon. Whether someone accepts the official conclusion or believes important questions remain unanswered, the case continues to demonstrate how powerful unresolved public doubt can become. In the end, perhaps the biggest lesson isn't about proving one theory over another. It's about understanding why certain stories continue echoing across generations, challenging assumptions long after the headlines disappear. Some investigations end in a courtroom. Others continue in public memory. Kurt Cobain's story belongs firmly in the second category. If you're fascinated by investigations where the official story is only one part of a much larger conversation, this channel explores the evidence, the history, and the unanswered questions behind some of the world's most talked about cases. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the stories that continue to spark debate long after the headlines fade.